She was nothing, just a shadow drifting across the snow, an albino omega whose only value was the pity she could evoke. He was everything, the Alpha King, a force of raw, brutal power whose world revolved around strength and dominance. Yet when she stumbled upon a dying wolf trapped beneath the frozen expanse of a lake, she did the only thing she could. She sang. She sang a song of solace to a stranger on the brink of death, unaware he was the king's own brother. Hundreds of miles away, that fragile melody tore through the night, burrowing into the king's soul, binding them in ice and fate. He didn't know her face, but under the silver gaze of the moon, the most formidable wolf on the continent whispered a name he had never heard. The wind across the blackwood tundra didn't just howl, it screamed, sharp as a blade, unrelenting, and Lyra was its marked prey. She tugged tighter at her thin, patched cloak, the gray-white wool blending seamlessly with the snow, echoing her pale hair and skin. She was the ghost of the Blood Ridge Pack, an albino omega, in a world that worshipped pigment, rank, and ferocity. She had none of those gifts. Her pack tolerated her existence with a mix of annoyance and indifference. She was a bad omen, a weakness written into their bloodline. Only the pack alpha Ronin offered her a shred of kindness. But it was the heavy, begrudging kind that came from obligation. The rest, particularly the aspiring female elites led by the beta's daughter Mara, were merciless. To them, Lyra was a moving target for their contempt, a living symbol of everything they despised. She had learned silence. She had learned to vanish. She foraged, mended, and wished herself invisible. Today the tundra was harsher than usual. The blizzard had stripped the nearby forest of even the hardiest winter herbs. She was 3 miles from the pack house, dangerously close to the forbidden frozen stretch of Lake Kalen. The ice was perilous, the territory fiercely disputed, but hunger was a more immediate tyrant than pack law. Pushing through snow-laden pines, she froze. The lake lay ahead, a blinding sheet of white, scarred at its center by a jagged black fracture. It was a pressure crack, a place where the water churned too violently to freeze solid. But it wasn't that which held her in place. It was the blood, a thick dark stain, almost black in the dim light, seeping across the snow. A trail led from the woods, a desperate sprint marked in crimson. Lyra's first instinct, her omega instinct, was to flee. Blood meant predators. Blood meant death. Then she heard it, a wet scraping sound from beneath the ice. Cautiously, she approached her worn boots, sinking into the snow. She peered down into the dark water. 5 feet below, a massive black wolf writhed his fur, a stark contrast against the blue-white ice. He wasn't drowning. He had found a small air pocket, but he was dying. A jagged tear in his shoulder bled steadily into the frigid water. He had been ambushed, forced to flee across the lake, only for the ice to betray him. He was an outsider, foreign, wild, radiating an overwhelming power that made her own wolf instinctively bow in awe. "Oh no." Lyra breathed her words, crystallizing in the freezing air. She dropped to her knees, pounding at the ice, with fists too small to break it. She was an omega. She had no strength, no claws to bend the world to her will. She was helpless. The wolf ceased struggling and turned amber eyes blazing with intelligence, locking onto hers. He understood. He knew death was near, and she knew she couldn't save him. The weight of sorrow crushed her. Another soul alone, facing the same isolation she had always known. It was unbearable. She couldn't save him, but she could give him. This he wouldn't face it alone. Lyra sank back onto her heels hood, slipping snow collecting on pale lashes. Eyes closed, she began to sing. Not a song of command, not a call to rally. A lullaby, soft and haunting, a melody her mother had hummed years ago. Her voice was quiet yet piercing, a perfect unwavering note against the howling wind. A voice no one in her pack had ever heard. She sang of the moonlight on the summer forest floor, of warmth in the den. She sang of peace, of letting go, of release. Beneath the ice, the great wolf froze. The panic drained from his amber eyes, replaced by a raw, weary gratitude. The magic wasn't in the notes she sang, it was in the intent. It was the Omega's gift, long ignored by a world obsessed with dominance, not to command, but to comfort. Her voice became an anchor, a fragile warmth in the encroaching frost. He looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the pale skin, the ghostly white hair, the translucent beauty that the world would call a curse. And he was grateful. As the last of his strength ebbed away, he offered her the only thing left. He opened his mind. It wasn't a full mind link, not a conversation. It was a desperate final surge of imagery and sensation. Tessa choked on her song as her mind flooded with it. She saw a fortress of black stone, a throne carved of shadows, a face striking severe with the same amber eyes as the wolf beneath her. A name, Darius. A brotherhood, a love, a failure. Tell him the wolf's dimming eyes begged one last flicker of psychic fire sent north, carried on the final pulse of his royal blood. Darius, she whispered through the song, and then he was gone. The light left his eyes. The hulking body slumped, drifting slowly into the dark depths. Tessa collapsed onto the snow, shaking her mind, reeling from the torrent of power and the name Darius. She didn't fully know the name, but she understood the weight behind it, King. She had just sung to the dying brother of the Alpha King. Panic clawed at her chest. She had to flee. She had to pretend none of it had happened. She sprinted back into the woods. The image of those amber eyes burned into her memory, the name pounding in her mind. Hundreds of miles north, a black stone keep pierced the mountains like a shard of obsidian. That was Darius's seat, implacable, merciless, as unyielding as the king himself. Darius ruled 3 territories, 1,000 wolves, and commanded the terrified loyalty of a dozen lesser packs. Absolute power came with a constant test. To the east, Cade of the Winterfang clan was growing bold. His scouts prodded at Darius's borders, measuring defenses, testing treaties. Darius stood over a massive oak table in the war room, a carved map of his territories spread beneath him. Jax, his chief enforcer, delivered a report. Winterfang scouts have been spotted near Kaelin territory. They claim hunting, but they're far too close to Bloodridge borders. Testing the treaty, Darius leaned over the map, his presence pressing down like the weight of mountains. The Bloodridge pack, led by Ronan, is weak. He starves his pack while flaunting wealth trading with humans. Cade knows this. Send. He stopped, hand clenched over the map. The room seemed to drop 20 degrees in an instant. Jax and the other alphas stiffened the air, crackling with their king's displaced power. My King Jax demanded, hand twitching toward his blade. Darius didn't answer. He was no longer in the war room. He was submerged. Cold. Dark. The ragged tear in his shoulder burned. The ice scraped against claws that could not escape. Panic, fury, crushing solitude, they all flooded him. Kael! He gasped, clutching the table. Kael! Then the song reached him. Pure, defiant, warm. It cut through the agony of his brother's death, through his own despair, a beacon of impossible comfort. He glimpsed pale skin, snow-white hair, a figure among pine shadows. Tessa! She sang. The connection shattered. The warmth vanished. Death slammed into him. With the icy finality of a tomb. Kael. The roar was not a word, but primal grief, shaking stone walls. Windows cracked. Alphas dropped to their knees. Heads bowed, terrified by the king's anguish. Kael was gone. The only family left, the brother he had sent south to patrol weaker packs, the one he had argued with, dead. Darius' rose amber eyes now unearthly glowing gold with raw murderous fury. My king, what is it? Jax demanded, breaking protocol. He's gone, Darius rasped, voice like grinding stone. Cade. This was Cade's work. We don't know. He was ambushed. Darius slammed his fist into the oak. Haunted. unstoppable, burning with vengeance. Not just the death, but the song. The voice. It rattled through his skull, cutting through his fury like a blade. It was the only thing that had granted his brother peace. And for that, Darius would burn the world to find its source. He stormed from the war room, shoving past his guards, and climbed to the highest battlement. The wind tore at his cloak, but he barely noticed. All he felt was the void where Kale had been. He stared up at the full, indifferent moon, the moon goddess, the deity of their kind, the one who dictated their fates. Why, he howled at the sky. You gave me this power, this crown, only to feel my own blood freeze. He sank onto his haunches, a king reduced to a grieving wolf. His mind clung to the final image Kale had sent him, the pale hair, the frozen lake, the song, the whispered name. Kale hadn't said it aloud, but Darius's own soul had heard it in the melody. A resonance. Tessa. He didn't know who she was, didn't know what she was. But she had touched his brother's soul last. He lifted his face, a mask of iron. Back into the keep he strode, every step precise. Jax, he bellowed. His commander was at his side instantly. Alpha, take your 3 best shadows. Ride south to Lake Kalen, Bloodridge territory. My king. Jax asked, face grim. What exactly are we looking for? Darius growled low. My brother died there, under the ice. You will find a scent of royal blood, and with it find her. She has white hair. She sings. Bring her to me alive, and bring Kale. Retrieve my brother. Darius commanded, voice breaking for only a heartbeat. And find the one who sang to him. The next day Tessa moved like a live wire, nerves taut. Every snapping twig, every sidelong glance from a packmate felt like accusation. She had told no one. To admit she had been at the Forbidden Lake invited punishment. To confess she had communed with a powerful dead stranger risked whispers of witchcraft or sympathy for rogues. She scrubbed the massive iron pots in the communal kitchen hands, raw from the constant scrubbing. Look at the little ghost, Mara sneered, leaning against the stone counter. Mara embodied everything. Tessa was not tall, strong, glossy, brunette hair, the sharp, cruel confidence of a high-ranking beta, destined to be Alpha Ronan's mate and cement her place at the top. Tessa kept her head down, white hair falling into her face. Please, Mara. I just need to finish. You reek, Leela said, wrinkling her nose. What is that smell, damp? Something else? Tessa froze. The scent of the wolf, royal blood. She hadn't washed it away. It had seeped into her very being. It's just the lake mud, she whispered. Mara's eyes narrowed. Lake Kalen. You went there, you worthless little thing. Alpha Ronan forbade anyone near that ice. Rogue territory. I was looking for herbs, Tessa said quietly. Mara shoved her hard. Tessa stumbled, crashing against the pot rack. Heavy iron pans clanged to the floor. You were meeting someone, weren't you? Mara pressed, wolfish eyes flashing gold. Someone from the rogues. No, Tessa, no, Tessa cried, pressing herself to the wall. I swear The voice that cut through the kitchen wasn't Mara's. Deep, controlled. A baritone edged with ice and steel. The door blocked by 3 massive figures. Clad in black fur, practical gray armor, no insignia. But the king's crest, a howling wolf, crowned by a full moon. The king's shadows. Mara and her friends dropped instantly into Bo's bravado gone. Commander Mara breathed, recognizing the center figure. Commander Jax Darius's right hand ignored her. His eyes swept the room. Nostrils flaring as he sniffed the air, lethal focus in every line of his face. Past Mara, past Arya, and Lyra. His gaze, the pale winter sky hue of calculated danger, landed on Tessa. He moved toward her. Tessa trembled, trapped between stone wall and the most terrifying wolf she had ever encountered. He was even more formidable than the wolf trapped in ice. Stopping just a foot from her, he inhaled sharply. His eyes widened fractionally. He recognized the scent. "You," he growled, "not a question. You carry the mark of royal blood and the ice of the lake." Mara rose from her bow laughter, sharp with disbelief. "Commander, you must be mistaken. That's just Tessa, an albino, a defective Omega. She's nothing." Jax didn't even glance at her. His gaze never left Tessa, trembling so violently she could barely remain upright. "What is your name, Omega?" he demanded. "Tessa," she stammered. The name hit Jax like a physical blow. The same name the king had whispered. He had found her. This child. "Ronan?" Jax's voice thundered through the kitchen. The Blood Ridge Pack Alpha, broad-shouldered in his late 40s, whose ambition often outpaced his strength, hurried in. He saw the king's shadow turn Mara's smugness into confusion, saw Tessa pressed against the wall. "Commander Jax." "An unexpected honor," Ronan said, voice strained. His fingers fiddled nervously with a plain watch on his wrist. "What is the meaning of this? If this Omega has caused trouble, this Omega," Jax cut him off, voice flat, "is to come with us." Silence fell absolute. Mara's jaw dropped. "Taken. Taken." Ronan confirmed, baffled. "To where? For what crime? Not as a prisoner." Jax said, voice steady. "By order of Alpha King Darius, she is being summoned to Blackstone Keep." Tessa's vision tunneled. The king. The name from her vision. Darius. He knew. He knew she was there. He would hold her responsible for failing to save his brother. "No." "Please," Tessa whispered, genuine terror flooding her. "I didn't do anything. I couldn't save him. I tried, but I was too weak. Please." Her desperate, truthful plea only confirmed it for Jax. "My king does not wish you harm, Jax," said voice, softening slightly. He was a soldier, but not a monster. He could sense her raw, untainted terror. "He wishes to speak with you about his brother." He held out a hand. "You will come now." Mara's face twisted with disbelief, a new dark jealousy rising. The king's shadows summoned for her the white ghost. It felt impossible. Tessa looked at the hand. Going with him was likely death. Shaking, she placed her small, raw hand into the massive leather-gloved grip of the king's enforcer. "Take her," Jax ordered his men. Gently. They wrapped her in a thick, fur-lined cloak richer than anything her own Alpha possessed and escorted her from the room. Tessa glanced back, once catching the shocked, envious eyes of Mara. She was the white ghost, and she was being taken to the king of all wolves. The journey north was a blur of speed and suffocating heat. Tessa was placed in an enclosed high-tech carriage, something she had only seen in pictures, pulled by a reinforced jeep instead of horses. Jax rode inside with her, a mountain of silent, disciplined energy. He offered food, dried venison, hardtack, which she accepted gratefully, and water. But he spoke no words. Tessa huddled in the borrowed cloak, too terrified to ask questions. She was a leaf caught in a hurricane, her fate completely out of her hands. After a day and a half of relentless travel, they arrived at Blackstone Keep. Not a keep. It was a fortress. It rose from the mountain itself, black granite and dark timber, sharp angles, imposing towers. Designed to repel armies, its power was palpable, a low vibration in the air that made her teeth ache. She was escorted through massive gates, past guards with armor polished to black mirrors, through courtyards filled with the strongest, deadliest wolves she had ever seen. They stared at her, a pale, tiny creature in their midst, their eyes glowing with suspicion. Jax did not take her to a cell as she expected. He led her to the heart of the keep, the great hall. The doors opened. She was gently pushed inside. Vast, shadowed ceiling, polished stone floor, banners depicting the history of the royal pack hung from the walls. At the far end of the hall, Atop a dais of black stone sat a throne, and on that throne sat the king. Tessa's breath caught. It was him, the man from her vision, the one with Kael's eyes. Alpha King Darius was nothing like any alpha she had ever known. His presence didn't suggest power, it demanded it. It was a law of nature, pressing down on her, commanding submission. He wore simple black, the only ornament a silver chain of office. His dark hair pulled back, his face sharp, brutal, carved as if from stone. He rose. He didn't walk. He stalked. Descending the dais, each step echoed in the cavernous hall. Tessa dropped to her knees, bowing her head. "My king," she whispered, voice trembling. He stopped just short of her. She could feel the heat radiating off him. He said nothing for a long, tense minute, simply observed. Her scent, the carriage, her terror, the faint soap from her pack layered, with an underlying, unmistakable trace, Kael's blood. "You were with him," he growled. Deep resonant, a bass laced with grief, so raw it blurred with rage. "Yes," Tessa whispered, tears pricking her eyes. "At the lake. He was under the ice. I saw him. Did you help him? I couldn't," she sobbed, raising her pale, tear-streaked face. The ice was too thick. "I'm just an omega. I had no strength." He was bleeding. Dying. Darius's jaw tightened. "What did you do?" I sang," she admitted, voice breaking. "I didn't know what else to do. He was so alone. I couldn't let him die in the dark. I sang until he was gone." Darius stared down at her fragile, ghostly form. He had expected an assassin, a spy, a witch, someone to punish. Not this. Not the scent of purity. Not the overwhelming compassion. His wolf, the beast that lurked beneath his skin, stirred not with rage, but with curiosity. He crouched, lowering himself to her level. The act of a king kneeling was shocking. Tessa flinched. "Look at me," he commanded. She obeyed, violet-tinged eyes meeting his golden amber ones. He was close. The power radiating from him made her head spin. And as he looked at her, really looked past the fear, past the snow, past the blood of Kael, he centered her. Her true scent, pine needles after frost, winter berries. The first snow, pure and clean, achingly familiar. Mate. The realization hit Darius like a physical blow. He recoiled, stumbling back upright. "No," he whispered, choking. "My fated mate. The one chosen by the moon goddess. His lunar, the mother of his heirs, was an omega, a pale, fragile albino from a failing pack. Not a blessing. A curse. A political nightmare. His council would demand he marry a strong alpha female to secure heirs. Gideon would exploit this. He would brand Darius weak, cursed, by the moon, led by primal instincts. "It cannot be!" he snarled, turning from her fists, clenching at his sides. "My king," Tessa asked, confused by his violent reaction. "You are lying," he roared, whipping around, testing her. He needed her to be a fraud, a witch who had tricked him. "You charmed him. You sang to him and did this to me." Tessa scrambled back, terrified. "No, I don't know what you mean. I swear on the goddess, I only sang kindness, kindness." His laugh was harsh, bitter. "Kindness gets you killed. It got my brother killed." "I am sorry," she wept. "I am sorry. He is gone. I felt his love for you. I felt it. I only wished him peace." Tessa's raw, defiant grief collided with Darius's own. Her honesty, her lack of guile, her pure, unshielded soul. It slammed into the mate bond, and the bond responded. A golden thread flared between them, taut and undeniable, refusing to be denied. His heart, his wolf, His very essence screamed. Mate, protect, cherish. The king's mind bellowed. Disaster, weakness, ruin. Darius turned his back, unable to face her, unable to breathe in her scent. At that instant, Jax entered, disciplined, silent. My king, take her to the royal guest wing, Darius ordered, voice strained. Post 2 guards. She is not to leave. She is not to be harmed. She is under my protection. My king. The council. They will be silent on this matter, Darius snapped. Jax nodded, impassive, and gently lifted Tessa to her feet. She looked at the king's broad, rigid back. Her heart caught between terror and a strange, impossible pull. She was led away, leaving Darius alone in the great, cold hall. That night, Darius did not sleep. He stood on the battlement where he had roared Kyle's name. The wind bit just as sharply, but tonight it felt different. He was no longer just grieving. He was waging a war within himself. The moon, the source of his blessing and his curse, hung cold above him. He had forced her name from her before Jax had taken her. It was the same name his soul had whispered. Tessa. He whispered it to the moon raw. Tessa. What have you done to me? Tessa's new life was a paradox. She was a prisoner in a palace. The guest quarters were larger than her entire pack house. A 4-poster bed, a fireplace that burned constantly, gowns of velvet and wool delivered by silent, stern-faced servants. They treated her not as a guest but as something fragile and dangerous. She was fed 3 full meals a day, rich stews and fresh bread. Within a week, the hollows of her cheeks began to fill. The constant chill she had lived with all her life faded, but her isolation deepened. Darius did not come. He sent Jax once a day to check on her. The commander would ask, "Do you require anything?" Tessa would whisper, "No thank you," and he would leave. She had become a ghost of a different shade now, a white ghost in a black fortress. Meanwhile, Darius waged his own battle. He buried Kale in a stark, silent ceremony, and he faced the political fallout. News of Kyle's death had spread along with rumors that the king was keeping a pale Omega in his tower. His council, led by the pragmatic, aging Thorn, confronted him. Darius. You must be reasonable, Thorn said, voice firm, in the king's private study. Maps lined the walls. The air smelled of old leather. A silver Mont Blanc pen rested neatly on the desk, a civilized tool for a savage ruler. Reasonable, Darius growled, staring at the snow outside. I am grieving. We understand. But Cade of Winterfang has sent condolences, Thorn said sharply. He is posturing, consolidating power, suggesting unification and alliance. He wants me to bow. Darius's amber eyes narrowed. Yes. He wants you to marry his sister, Thorn said bluntly. Selene. A true alpha female, strong from a powerful line. The marriage would end border disputes, unite eastern and northern packs, and silence doubts about your strength. The logical move is to marry into the family of the man who killed my brother. We have no proof. Darius growled. Only whispers, Thorn snapped, slamming a hand on the desk. But we know Cade is a threat. We know Selene is a prize. And we know you are harboring an albino Omega in the guest wing. The pack is unsettled. They see it as distraction, weakness. She is my business, Darius snarled. She is a liability, Thorn countered. Set her aside. Send her home. Marry Selene. Secure your throne. Do not let your grief or curiosity put us all at risk. Darius's wolf wanted to rip the old advisor's throat out for his insolence, but the king knew the man was right, or at least that his logic held. Leave me, Darius commanded. Thorn bowed, face grim. Think on it, my king. Cade and his sister arrive for the winter's feast in 3 days. You must have an answer. Darius swept his arm across the desk. Maps, the silver pen and inkwell crashed against the wall. He was trapped. Meanwhile, miles south, another wolf was plotting. Mara, furious and humiliated, seethed. Tessa, the insignificant Omega, summoned by the king. It made no sense. A slight. She who had trained, schemed, and thought herself destined to be lunar of her own pack, had been overlooked. Her jealousy festered, and it sparked a dangerous idea. She had been a fool chasing Alpha Ronan's favor. True power lay with the king or with the man who challenged him. Mara had not been entirely truthful. Her secret lover was not a rogue. He was a spy, a warrior from the Winterfang clan. For months she had fed him scraps of information, savoring the danger and the power it gave her. She had reported Kael's patrol route. She hadn't known or hadn't cared that he might die. Now she saw her true path. Darius was distracted, compromised by an Omega. Cade was rising. She left her pack under the guise of visiting her aunt, riding hard for the Winterfang border. She met her contact and demanded to see Cade. She was brought to the rival Alpha, a grizzled force of nature. All muscle scars and raw ambition. "You are the little beta from Bloodridge Pack," Cade grunted, eyeing her over. "I am Mara," said chin high, fearless, "and I have information that will secure your crown." Cade laughed. "And what would that be?" "The king," Mara said, voice dripping venom. "Darius has found his mate." Cade's smile faded. A mate bond, even faint, was a gift from the goddess, a source of power for an alpha. "Who, Evelyn?" Number Mara's words spat fire. "A worthless albino Omega from my pack. Her name is Tessa. He's keeping her hidden in his keep. He's infatuated." Cade stared at her, then threw back his head and laughed, a sound that rolled like thunder. "An Omega and Albino. The moon has cursed him. He has," Mara agreed. "He's weak, torn. His council urges him to marry your sister." Mara continued, "But his wolf wants the Omega. He's at war with himself, better than I could have hoped." "I am attending the winter feast with my alpha," Mara said. "Darius will be forced to choose. If he chooses the Omega, his council will abandon him for a leader who puts the pack above his whims. If he chooses your sister, he publicly rejects his fated mate." Cade's eyes gleamed. A mate rejection weakens the soul. It destabilizes an alpha. Either way, he loses. Expose him. At the feast, Mara urged, humiliate him. Show the assembled packs that their king is a distracted fool who would choose a pale rat over a true lunar. Cade studied her with newfound respect. Ruthless, clever. "And what do you gain from this little beta?" "When you are king," Mara said, voice low, "you'll need a lunar strong, cunning, and loyal. Evelyn is your sister. I am the better prize." Cade smiled. "Ambitious. I like that." "Very well. Come to the feast, you'll have your moment, and we'll see if King Darius bleeds." The great hall which Tessa had first entered in terror was transformed. Light poured from chandeliers, tapestries glowed, the heat of 1,000 bodies pressed around her. The winter feast was the king's show of power. A gathering of allied and vassal alphas to display unity and strength. Tessa was forced to attend. A servant dressed her in deep forest green velvet. The color made her pale skin and white hair shine, not sickly, not ghostly. For the first time, she didn't look like a shadow. She looked like porcelain, fragile and impossibly out of place. Tessa was seated not at the high table, but at a side table with lesser pack members. She recognized her own Alpha Ronan, who refused to meet her gaze. And she saw Mara's eyes, sharp, filled with predatory triumph. Tessa's stomach turned to ice. At the high table, Darius sat on his throne, face unreadable, an impenetrable mask. To his right, in the seat of honor, was Alpha Cade, and beside him, his sister Selene. Selene was radiant. Tall, fiery red hair, a laugh loud and confident, a perfect alpha female. She flirted openly with Darius, and he responded with quiet, low-toned politeness. eyes never straying toward the side table where Tessa sat. Tessa's heart, already tangled in fear and a strange pull toward the king, shattered. Of course he was a king. She was an Omega. This was reality. She was his mistake, his secret. He would marry Celine. And she would be sent home or locked away forever. The feast roared with voices, clinking glasses, alphas boasting. Then Darius rose. Silence fell. "We gather tonight," he began, commanding despite the undercurrent of tension. "We have lost much, but we remain strong. We look to new bonds, new alliances to secure our future." He raised his glass to Cade, who smirked, raising his in return. "To new alliances," Cade echoed, eyes flicking to his sister. Thorn, seated at the end of the table, nodded grimly. Darius was playing the political game perfectly. But before he could continue, Mara stood. "My king," she called, voice clear, strong, impossible to ignore. Every head turned. For a beta to rise and speak before the king was an extraordinary breach of protocol. Alpha Mara, Darius said, voice dropping into a dangerous calm. "You have the floor." "Forgive my intrusion, my king," she said, face a perfect mask of concern. "But as alphas, we speak truth. We speak of new alliances." "But what of old distractions?" Tessa's blood ran cold. "My own pack is concerned." Mara continued, striding into the center of the hall. "You have shown great hospitality to one of my packmates." "An Omega." Her finger jabbed directly at Tessa. Every eye in the hall, hundreds of alphas, betas, and warriors swiveled to the small, pale girl. "This Omega," Mara said, voice thick with false pity, "she is unwell. An albino. Cursed, many say. She wanders. Keeps secrets. She sings to the dead." A ripple of disgust and fear coursed through the crowd. "She was found at Lake Kalen," Mara, pressed voice rising. "The very night your royal brother was murdered. She smelled of a strange wolf. She consorted with the rogues who killed him." Tessa gasped, rising, but her words were swallowed by the roar of the crowd. Cade smiled into his cup, delighted. And worse, Mara shouted over them, all silencing the hall. "This unstable, cursed, rogue sympathizer. She has bewitched our king. She claims, yes, claims she is his mate." The hall erupted. An Omega, an albino, a rogue sympathizer, his fated queen. It was an insult, a joke. Thorn looked horrified. "My king, deny this. Tell them it is a lie for the good of the kingdom. Deny it." Cade stood, eyes sharp. "Darius, your people demand an answer. We are here to forge an alliance, and yet we find you harboring a pet, a delusional Omega who claims to be your mate. Is this the strength of the Alpha King? Or have the rumors of your weakness been true all along?" It was a trap. Darius was cornered. His council demanded denial. His enemies demanded confession. His potential allies stared at him with disgust. If he denied her, he would be rejecting his fated mate. His wolf would fracture his soul, leaving him weakened, and Tessa would be destroyed, labeled a liar, a witch. If he accepted her, every fear, every political calculation would explode into reality. His council would revolt. Cade would declare him unfit, cursed by the moon. Darius stood, silent, face unreadable. Tessa scanned the hall. She saw the cold calculation in Cade's eyes, the triumphant, hateful gleam in Mara's. Then she locked eyes with Darius. Golden amber blazing fire, and in them she saw the war raging within him. She offered him an escape. Lifting her chin, tears streaking her pale cheeks, she spoke, voice trembling but clear. "He's right," she said. "I am just an Omega. I am confused. I am sorry. I will go." She was offering him an out, taking the blame, falling on the sword to save him. Darius studied her, this fragile, pale creature who had faced death alone. Her bullies, and now an entire hall of enemies, To protect him was the strongest wolf in the room. He made his choice. He strode down from the dais, past Thorn's pleading eyes, past Cade's smug smirk, past Celine, shocked into silence. The crowd parted for him. He stopped in front of Tessa. She trembled, eyes glued to the floor. He placed a finger under her chin, lifting her face to meet his gaze. His eyes were no longer at war. They were calm, certain. "She did not claim me, Alpha," Cade Darius said, voice low but ringing across the silent hall. "She lied just now to protect me." He pulled Tessa to his sidearm, a steel band around her waist. "So I will speak the truth. I claim her." Gasps erupted. Mara's face went white. "This is Tessa of the Bloodridge Pack." Darius's voice boomed, regal, undeniable. "She did not consort with rogues," he continued, pointing at Cade. "She found my brother Kael after your wolves ambushed him and left him for dead. She did not flee. She stayed. She did what no warrior, no alpha, no king could do. She gave him peace. She sang to him as he died. He pressed his nose against her temple. She is not cursed. She is blessed. She is not a liar. She is my truth." He turned to the assembly, eyes glowing with a power they had never witnessed. "She is not just an Omega. She is my mate, and she is your lunar." The silence was absolute, a vacuum of disbelief. Then Cade laughed, harsh and braying, the sound slicing through the hall. "Luna, that you would shame your bloodline, your crown, and the memory of your brother by lifting this nothing to the throne." Cade sneered. "She is worth more than your entire bloodline, Darius." Darius growled gently, placing Tessa behind him. "Lies!" Cade roared, face purple with rage. His plan had failed. Darius had not been weakened. "You accuse me of my brother's death using the words of this Omega. I will not be insulted. I, Alpha Cade of the Winterfang clan, challenge you, Darius, for the crown by right of combat. Your weakness has gone on long enough." The hall erupted into chaos. Alphas shouted, forming a circle. The war was no longer whispers, it was fangs raw and deadly. "I accept," Darius roared. "No," Tessa screamed, clutching his arm. "Darius, don't. He's too strong." Darius looked at her eyes, molten gold. The fear in Tessa's voice wasn't for herself, it was for him. He cupped her face. "He killed my brother. He threatened my mate. There was no other end to this." He kissed her hard and deep, a kiss of possession, a promise of forever. Their first kiss tasted of winter wine and fate itself. The mate bond flared, a supernova of energy. Tessa gasped. Darius's muscles tensed. He released her and threw off his heavy ceremonial robes, revealing the warrior's leathers beneath. Cade did the same. "You should have chosen my sister, Darius." Cade snarled. "You could have had an empire. Now you'll only have a grave." The two alphas circled unarmed. They themselves were weapons. With a simultaneous roar, they shifted. Darius became a 9-foot-tall black wolf, a dire beast of shadow and fury. Cade transformed into a massive grizzled gray wolf, scarred and muscled, saliva dripping from his snarling jaws. The battle was instant brutal, not a fight of strategy, but a war of kings. They collided, a whirlwind of claws and teeth, smashing tables and scattering the onlookers. Cade brawled, trying to crush Darius with sheer weight. But Darius was faster, fueled by grief and the burning power of his acknowledged mate bond. He dodged, ripped, tore, slashing at Cade's flank and drawing blood. Cade howled in rage and countered, clawing at Darius's shoulder, the same one where Kael had fallen. The wound was deep. Darius staggered, front leg buckling. Tessa screamed. Cade saw his opening and lunged for Darius's throat. At the same moment, Mara, face twisted with insane jealousy, saw her chance. Her world was over. Darius would win. She would be exposed as a traitor. Unless there was no lunar. "If I can't be queen, then no one can," she shrieked, pulling a long silver dagger from her boot. She ran not at Darius, but at Tessa. Jax and Thorn were too far. The Alphas froze, locked on the battle. Tessa was alone. Mara's eyes burned with hatred. "Die, you pale bitch!" Tessa closed her eyes, bracing for the strike. But terror vanished, replaced by a cold, sudden calm. The same instinct that had made her sing to Kael now rose to protect her king. She did not flee. She did not cower. She opened her mouth and sang. But this was no gentle lullaby. This was a command accord of pure ancient power, a note that vibrated through bone and earth. It was the Omega's voice, the forgotten magic, not dominance, but authority. Power to command. Power to bring peace. Stop. The note hit Mara like a wall of steel. Her arm froze mid-air. The silver dagger slipped from her fingers. Hate drained violently from her mind, leaving her numb. She dropped to her knees, clutching her head, whimpering. Darius heard the song. It did not command him, it flowed into him. It carried the strength of the pack, the heart, the anchor. It cleared his mind, healed his shoulder, and fueled him with the power of his fated bond. As Cade lunged for his throat, Darius moved with impossible speed. He ducked under the attack, clamped his massive black jaws around Cade's neck, and tore. The strike was brutal, final. Cade collapsed, body reverting to human form, eyes wide with shock. Silence filled the hall. Darius, bleeding from his shoulder, shifted back. He was naked, covered in blood, his and Cade's, but he stood like a king. He ignored the body. He ignored the stunned Alphas. He ignored Mara, now restrained by Jax. He walked straight to Tessa, who trembled from the power she had unleashed. The entire world seemed to hold its breath as the Alpha King, the killer, the ruler, approached the pale Omega, and he knelt. He knelt at her feet in front of his council, his allies, and his enemies. He took her small, trembling hand. My lunar Darius's voice was raw, full of fire and devotion. Tessa stared at him, tears streaming down her pale cheeks. She reached up, pulling him to his feet. "My Alpha," she whispered. Thorn was the first to move. He had seen the power, the loyalty, the king kneeling before his mate. He stepped forward, bowing low first to Darius, then just as deeply to Tessa. "My king." My lunar, one by one, the other Alphas, stunned into submission, bent the knee. Ronan and his shadows, even Celine, Cade's sister, offered short, respectful nods. Alliances may have shifted, but strength demanded recognition, and she had shown it. Darius rose, drew Tessa close, and kissed her. The mate bond tested, and now triumphant flared a golden light only visible to them. It flooded the hall, healing wounds, binding their souls, marking the victory of fate itself. He was the king of beasts. She was his ghost, his queen, his Omega. The albino Omega, who had once been nothing, now stood as the most powerful lunar the Pax had ever known. Her strength lay not in claws but in compassion. Her authority was in her voice, not dominance. Darius, the savage king, discovered that his greatest power was not iron, but the steady, loving heart of his fated mate. Together they ruled not just a kingdom of wolves, but an empire of balance, proving that even the softest song can shatter the hardest ice. The moon goddess, in her mysterious ways, had chosen wisely. Thank you for listening to the story. Did you feel the chill of the ice? Did your heart pound when the king made his choice? If you loved Tessa and Darius's journey, show your support. Hit that like button. Share this with another story lover in need of a new obsession, and most importantly, subscribe. More stories of fated mates and impossible love are coming, and you won't want to miss a single one. Click subscribe and we'll see you next time.